All right, welcome to part 2 of the Reimagining School Readiness virtual workshop. I have a couple of announcements to make before we get started. The first one is that this webinar is 2 hours and is worth 2 general LEUs or library education units for Indiana library staff. So please note that there are 2 parts to this virtual workshop, and part 1 is a separate recording that is also 2 hours and worth 2 LEUs. Both recordings should eventually be located on the Indiana State Library's archived training page. If you're watching a recording of this webinar, instructions on how to obtain your LEU certificate are in the video's description on YouTube. You can also find those instructions on the ISL's Continuing Education website, which is under LEU policies. But in short, when you watch a recording, your director or someone in HR should create a certificate for you, as they're the ones who can verify that you watched. To register for other webinars or trainings available from the Professional Development Office, please see the Indiana State Library's events calendar, which can be found on our website at www.in.gov/library, and then it's under Services for Libraries. Okay, let's get started. So just want to quickly reintroduce your presenters for today. I'm Beth Yates. I'm the Youth Services Consultant at the Indiana State Library, and my colleague Suzanne Walker is presenting with me.
Hi, everybody. I'm Suzanne from the Indiana State Library. I am also the director of the Indiana Center for the Book, and I work in the Indiana Young Reader Center. And I used to have Beth's job, and I love working with Beth. We are a good team.
Yay. Children's people, unite. Woo. We thought we would start today with just a really quick refresher of yesterday's main points, because we will be referring to these throughout today. We're going to be asking you to make some connections between these key findings and some different activities that you might do in the library. So first of all, the first one says that quality adult-child interactions shape children's thinking skills. The conversations that we have, the questions that we ask, and the experiences that we provide matter. So things we can do related to this one: we can have conversations with children during programs. We can encourage parents to have conversations with their children. Asking them open-ended questions, either about the books that you're reading or about the activities you're leading, is one great way to spur them to have a conversation, as well as to think more creatively about what they're doing. You can give them space to respond, especially the youngest children. So we talked about how even babies who can't talk yet need that space so they can learn how conversations work. It also takes them a little longer to respond than an adult would. Using new vocabulary when talking to them is also something great you can do so that they can hear that vocab in context. The second one is that children with stronger social skills do better in school, the workplace, and in life. Child-directed, guided play is key to the development of social skills. So for this one, we talked about reciprocal play versus parallel play. Interaction and playing together to encourage those social skills is something that we can certainly do in the public library. The third one is that science learning is critical for the development of higher order thinking. So incorporating STEM into our programs here and there, even for the youngest children, can really make an impact. And related to this is the importance of giving children the chance to be hands-on and to explore and investigate items during our programs, and to use the scientific method, which means, you try, you make mistakes, you try again, teaching resilience. The fourth is that math skills are an early indicator of developmental conceptual thinking and can predict long-term success in school. And we learned also that math is an even better indicator of success than early literacy skills are, because conceptual thinking is used in all aspects of school and our lives, really. The fifth one was that planning, self-awareness, and self-control, which are your executive functions, predict positive school and life outcomes, and that kids can learn these skills through experience. So giving them chances to practice self-control, cognitive flexibility and creativity, and to use their working memory are all good ways for them to work on those skills. And finally, the sixth finding is that stress impacts learning and that children learn best when their basic needs are met. And we can offer a caring, safe place at the library, but also this is a motivator potentially for us to turn outwards, to look outside the library walls and to try to reach families that might not be coming into the library. It's also an excellent reason to participate in programs like summer food service. Plus, of course, we learned that growth mindset is so important to all ages, but that fostering a growth mindset and encouraging young children to continue to think that their brains are growing and changing and can keep learning is key to all of this, really. And that shows marketed improvements in their learning through school. Okay. On to fun stuff.
Okay, guys, I get to start with the fun stuff. Thanks, Beth, so much for sharing the recap. And just as a reminder, all of those things that Beth just shared are on your one sheet, the overview of key findings that was in your parcels. Now, speaking of your parcels, we're going to go ahead and get those out right now. And we are going to do a couple activities together. So the first one that you need is Nature Mashup. And you also need Shake, Rattle, and Roll. So don't do anything yet. The other thing you need is you also need this sheet that says, in what ways do you see one or more of the Reimagining School Readiness skills being addressed through this activity? So go ahead and get those items. You will need, again, Nature Mashup, Shake, Rattle, and Roll, and this sheet. So what's going to happen next is we're actually going to put you guys in some small groups. And you're going to get about 10 minutes together. And while you're together, you're going to go ahead and do these two activities. You're going to do Nature Mashup first. And then you're going to talk about and fill out this form. You're going to fill out this first column. Do you want to put the form on the screen, Beth? There you go. Yeah. So you're going to fill out that first column to talk about how Nature Mashup can encourage babies to talk and play, do science and math, and use their body and brain, obviously with their caregivers. And then you'll also fill out that the second column. And you're going to do this together as a group. We want you to have a conversation after you've actually done the activity. The other thing you'll need for Nature Mashup is the bowl that was in your box. Mine is a mess because I accidentally dumped my Nature Mashup on my computer earlier. It was okay, don't worry. And then you'll also need like the little bit of water that you have. Mine is in a little bottle. You might have it in a cup or something. Okay, so that's a lot of the pre-instructions. Here are the specific instructions. You're going to be put into small groups. Beth and I will circulate and kind of check in with all the groups. You're going to have about 10 minutes. You're going to do the Nature Mashup activity. And then after that, you're going to do the Shake, Rattle, and Roll activity. I think the Nature Mashup one is slightly tricky. So I'll just mention basically what you're doing is you're going to dump some tea into a bowl. You're going to sort of experience it, ask some questions about it, and then add water. And the first group found that if you add water a little bit at a time, that maybe will be a more effective way to experience that activity.
Although I think it's important to note that if you're doing this with kids, they can do it however they want to.
Yes, that's true. Right? That's true. You guys are going to benefit from what the earlier class learned. However, if you do like 1 teaspoon at a time, then you can talk about math and counting and things like that. So, but Beth is absolutely right with a young child. This might go lots of different ways. Does anyone have any questions before we break you out into groups?
About what you're supposed to be doing. So you're working on those first 2 experiments, and then you're filling out the form, and you can work together to do that. We encourage you to work together. I think we're going to do 3 breakout rooms. So your groups will be on, like 5 or 6 people.
That's about what we had this morning.
Yeah. All right. Tell me
last chance for questions. Everyone feels sure? Okay, great. All right.
The only other thing to let you know is that our goal, it's 1:44 right now. We'll bring you back by around 1:54.
Yeah.
Probably. Okay. All right, here we go. Oh, don't want to do that. There we go. Everybody should be back.
Okay, guys, so we're going to go ahead and have a little discussion about how things went in your breakout rooms. What we'd like to focus on is any observations that you made doing these activities about how the skills and how the findings sort of are illustrated in doing these activities. Does anybody want to unmute and talk about, you know, what they recorded?
Just maybe what your group discussed. And we'll start with the nature mashup.
I don't know where our group's numbered. I don't remember.
That's okay.
That's okay.
Go ahead, Kara.
So for the nature mashup, under talk and play, we talked a lot about what we were doing and how we were mixing things up. We also, there's also the possibility of like how you could count like the number of spoonfuls of water that you might put in. And we were like observing like the way that water reacts to the tea. Then we also talked about how under like body and brain, stirring motion might be under that. Also following directions, so like self-regulation. And there was also like the touching and sensory aspect, and like smell we also said was kind of sensory, and that kind of also fits with science and math, like observing those different senses as well as the benefits that has for the brain.
That's a great list. Thank you. That's one thing, you know, they're using those fine motor skills to stir also, if they're using the stirrer. And fine motor skills are part of writing for every child ready to read, side note. So they have to develop those strong hand muscles.
Anybody else have anything they wanted to mention or ask about nature mashup? How do you guys feel about doing this with babies? This is a debate that Beth and I have. Feel free to share your feelings.
Yeah, it's okay if you can be honest.
As long as there's nothing toxic, it'd be okay for babies, but they might put it in their mouth.
In their mouth,
Right,
yeah.
exactly.
I think like a parent would definitely have to be there with them, and it's a guided kind of activity.
Yeah,
And that's,
for sure.
you know, that's kind of one of the things that we're hoping for is guided play. And this could be like a guided activity with parents. So yeah.
The tea did turn red, so I would maybe choose a tea that does not turn, or something else that, you know, would be like less of a stain if it ended up staining.
Yes.
You're not alone. Samantha's asking about that too.
Yes, exactly. I think it would stain because tea stains, right? Like it's a natural dye even sometimes. So that's a really good point. It probably could stain.
Do you want to tell them about the original
Yes, sure.
instructions?
So on your nature mashup card, there's actually a little grayed out section that says Bay Area Discovery Museum Process. I had a little typo there, but what they really want you to do is go outside. Like they wanted you guys, and what we had to do when we got trained for this was we had to go outside and pick things up off the ground and bring them in and then squash them up in a bowl and add a little water. And I was so nervous about that with babies, like not knowing exactly what your participants would bring in, or if you were going to do that and it is going to end up in their mouths. So that's why we went to tea instead, so that we could really control the variable. So, but Bay Area Discovery Museum is really into doing things that challenge children's thinking. And I think that this certainly can, you know, you're asking them to make observations, etc. So let's switch gears and move on to
Beth and Susan, we have a Nature Explorer classroom as part of our library system, and they are always doing things outside with kids. And they have some areas that's like kind of controlled because like they have rocks that's been in a part of it. So they, you know, and they bring mud and all kind of things in. So this would be a great activity for for our Nature Explorer classroom.
That's
Yeah.
great. That's wonderful. It's a good fit for that. And you know, I think being outside in and of itself feels very sciencey anyway. I mean, that's what a field trip used to be, right? You're going out into the field to check on the plants and things. Thanks for sharing, Angela. Okay, let's go ahead and move on to the second one, which is the shake, rattle, and roll activity. Who would like to share a little bit about the findings and how this activity can illustrate those? Let's hear from someone we haven't heard from yet. If you're not careful, I'll pick on you. I feel like Lauren kind of wants to talk.
Of course you didn't. I talked about how great the tea smelled. Didn't that count?
Well, it did.
I'm just kidding. So we talked about with talk and play, how you could talk through the process with the kids of choosing what they're going to put in, and that, you know, the whole shaking it and dancing in itself was a play motion. And with the science and math, we talked about maybe counting what they were putting in there and comparing the different sizes, like with the pom-poms and things like that. And then with the body and brain, again, the motion of dancing and singing and some of the sensory aspects with shaking the egg around was some of the things we talked about.
Lauren, you're a good, I can't think of the word I want.
A good
Thank you so
sport.
much. Good sport. Yep. Thanks so much. Does
Yeah.
anyone else want to go ahead and share about shake, rattle, and roll? Beth, do you want to fill in with some things?
I want someone else to say something.
All right.
Maybe one of the other groups, if you don't want to relay what you said, if you remember what somebody in your group said that was like, oh yeah, that's an interesting thing I didn't think about.
I'll say something.
Thank you, Allison.
Definitely with like the science and math part, size ordering, counting, lots of opportunities for definitely math skills in that one.
Thank you, Allison. Did I see somebody else unmute?
It was me.
Chloe.
I really like doing egg shaker activities because I think it's great for executive function too. Like when you have them do rhythms or they have to do quieter and louder, it's a lot of like self-control and regulation that they have to work really hard at. And you can just see it when they're like, but I want to be loud.
That's a really good point. Brylan in the chat says children could mimic the adults for talk and play and body and brain. Yeah, exactly. So mimicking what you're being told to do is totally executive function for sure. That's great.
And I'll throw in one more since you asked me to.
And then
Spatial
Shanna
awareness.
Lee.
Oh yeah. Oh, sorry, Shanna Lee. I was just gonna say spatial awareness because you can
Mhm.
talk about putting things inside the egg and if it falls out, things like that. Sorry, go ahead, Shanna Lee.
I just was thinking like you could also have them compare like what sounds the different items made when they put them in, and that would be kind of a science and a body and brain, yeah, kind of both.
Yeah, it's absolutely science if you ask any kind of what if question. So what happens if we only put the pom-poms in? What happens if we only put the wooden balls in? What happens if we only put the beans in? You know, all of those, how does it sound differently? That absolutely translates into like a little science lesson because they're trying different things, right? And that's also a great way to encourage growth mindset because it's not like you can really fail in this activity, I don't think, but just having the opportunity to encourage trying different things is a really good thing too. Oh, the other thing I was going to mention is that I think especially in the shake, rattle, and roll, anytime you're asking a child to make a plan ahead of time is really good for executive function. So you could even be like, okay, we're going to do this together. How do you think we should start? You know, what do you think we should do first? To really engage the child and have them sort of direct what you've put in front of them. Okay, all right. Are you guys ready for insane amounts of fun with the next activity? I'm telling you, it's going to be great. Okay, so you're still going to need your sheet. We've got 2 more columns. We're going to do the Hex Bug Mazes and we're going to do the wind chimes. So for that, you're gonna need your hex bug, which looks like this. And you do want to see it's got a switch on the bottom. So go ahead and turn it on and see if it vibrates. I hope that they all do. Everybody in the first class didn't have any issues with their hex bugs. If it doesn't turn on, I'm very, very sorry. You won't get to have the time of your life. And then the other thing you're gonna need is your wind chime packet. And I will tell you, the hex bugs are extremely fun and the wind chime packet takes a little bit of time. So, So what we'd like you to do is just on your desk, and maybe you've got a couple of books lying around that you can I don't know if I'll be able to show that. Yeah, look. So I've got a couple of books here and here's my hex bug and it will actually kind of walk through my books and it will turn corners. I don't know if you could see that. So if you want to set up a little maze really quickly, I just put 2 books in front of me. You might be able to do something like that. That's all you're doing. You're setting up a maze. You're going to run your hex bug through it, and then you're going to fill out the form. And then for the wind chime, just follow the directions. I like to think of this as more of a wind sock than a wind chime, really. So just to maximize the amount of time that you guys get to spend together, I think we'll go ahead and put you in your groups. You'll be in different groups maybe than you were before. You might have some overlap. But again, try to have a rich discussion about
Nice, Barbara. Sorry, Barbara's already doing it. You can
Oh,
see.
yay, look at Barbara's screen, everybody. Oh, look at that hex bug go. I love it. That's great. Okay, we're gonna let you go so you guys can have fun together.
Yeah, and we'll bring you back probably about 2:16-ish, 2:17-ish.
Yeah, we'll give you a little.
Okay,
A little
here
extra.
we go.
Yeah.
And you'll have to join again if you haven't yet. So I'm going to pause the recording.
Okay, so everybody's back. So before we have our conversation for the form and what you guys thought about the findings, how many of you guys like hex bugs? Nod your head if you like them. Yeah, aren't they fun? Okay, so Beth is going to give us the news about how much they cost.
Oh yeah. So we got this question in this morning's training. People wondered how much they were. So I looked it up again, and the ones that we got were 5 in a package for $20. So they're about $4 each. So are they cheap enough to give away as summer reading prizes? Probably not, unless you're very well funded. But it's not so expensive that you couldn't buy maybe a small number of them to use in programming potentially. And then the batteries are replaceable, and they're like little watch batteries. Those are only, you can get them on Amazon for about $5 for 20. Probably somewhere between $5 and $10 is the average price for a good size package of them. So
yeah, I would be real careful with those packages though, because it's real bad if children swallow batteries. So just keep that in mind.
Right.
Yeah.
You definitely wouldn't want to let them put
Right.
their own batteries in.
Okay, so with that preface, who would like to go ahead and unmute and tell us a little bit about how those activities, and we'll start with the hex bugs, how it illustrated the 6 findings from this training? Shanley says there's a game called Bugs in the Kitchen that is basically an interactive hex bug maze. So that's cool. Guys, I'm not above calling on somebody. So
I think
thanks, Sarah.
I did a program in the spring where we built brush bots with toothbrushes and the batteries and all of that. And the kids, I was so amazed at how much fun the kids had. Not so much the competition that we had of whose would go faster, but how much they enjoyed the collaboration of just building paths and mazes. So I just think the hex bugs would make that even more fun, because you didn't have to worry about, did your motor stay attached to your toothbrush? And it could be more about, let's work together to build this cool maze and run these through them. So I think there's such beautiful opportunity there for some problem solving, some executive function, and some conversation.
Love
Social
it.
skills, right? Social
Yes.
skills to that too, when they're working
Yes.
together.
And even like the idea of making a plan, this is what we're going to do together. Great. Thank you so much, Sarah. Who else wants to talk about hex bugs?
We have a chat comment. It would help with their reactionary skills when the hex bug goes in a different way than expected. And we talked about how especially the youngest children want to investigate something more if it doesn't go the way that they expect it to. Probably applies to, you know, early elementary kids and preschoolers as well.
Yeah, so they are going to be more likely to spend time with these. And maybe that's why they're so fun for us too, is that, you know, they don't do exactly what you think they're going to do. And so you want to kind of see if you can make your maze in such a way that it will do it. So you're spending more time and therefore making more connections in your brain, right? Carrie, you're unmuted. Did you want to share something?
Oh, no, but I'll just add that
Thanks.
there's like a process of trial and error. So I think that really speaks to the scientific process.
Absolutely does. Yeah. How many of you guys would want to do a program with these? They're fun, aren't they? We talked in the earlier group that, you know, if you had even like 5 groups of children and they each got one hex bug, then they could work together to do a maze and send the hex bug through it. And then they could even rotate and try, you know, everyone else's mazes too. So awesome. Anything else on these, on hex bugs? What about math? It's a good activity for team building for adults. Yep. I mean, something else you could do is anytime you're doing anything with blocks and mazes, it's really spatial thinking, and that would fill that math requirement or that math expectation. Anything you want to add, Beth, before we move on to wind chimes?
No, I think that folks are doing great. And I just wanted to say, I know we're a small group, and I'm so thrilled that so many of you have your cameras on and that you're all willing to share. I know it's not easy to talk in front of a group, so thank you.
Yes, thanks so much. Okay, so let's talk about wind chimes. We're going to put aside the wonderful, exciting world of hex bugs and pick up the also wonderful, exciting, creative world of wind chimes / wind socks. Does anybody have one that they made? Can you hold it up to the camera? Brylan's got one, Sarah's got one, Lauren, Shanley, very good. Okay, so what kinds of skills do you guys think come through when you're working on these? And this one they have for early elementary.
Definitely fine motor skills.
You're definitely going to get that body part and do the fine motor skills. Brylan says a lot of planning would be involved. What about math? How can you incorporate math into the wind chimes?
We were talking about the weight mass, you know, which are larger, which are smaller, yeah, things like that.
Yep, all of those spatial words, like, is this heavy enough to, you know, pull down? How is it balanced on your stick?
They can use like patterns of colors or patterns of materials, whatever they're using too.
Yes. Brylan says planning what's going to go on and if the colors will go together. You could have a color pattern. You could even talk about the color wheel if you wanted to and really get into like contrasting colors or complementary colors, etc. Warm colors, cool colors. There's a whole lot of color spectrum stuff that you could do. Anything else on the wind chimes? I threw mine on the floor.
I thought it was fun having the paper clips used to attach things, being able to thread things, being able to rubber band things, like all those different ways of attaching were fun. So
I love that because I don't even know that I thought that that's what you would do with those things.
that's what I did with him, and I thought it was fun.
That's great. That's great. And I think also just the idea, you know, I think sometimes the Bay Area Discovery Museum activities are a little difficult. Like this might be a little hard for preschoolers, maybe not so hard for early elementary, but to get things to go on, you know, they might have to try and try again. And like we talked about yesterday, that's really, really good for growth mindset to give it a shot and to try something in a different way than your neighbor might try, keeping your mind open to other people's takes on things. So I appreciate that, Sarah.
Yeah, I was just going to chime in and say there's a lot of scientific method going on in creating things like this, especially if you tied in. It's very similar to an activity we did in Leap into Science where we made wind testers. So you could bring in a fan and you could do it at different levels and see, oh, the ones that you tied on with the pipe cleaners don't move as much as the ones with the
Crepe paper.
crepe paper. They do like the
Streamers,
flutter
streamers, yeah.
crepe paper,
Yeah.
things like that, and have them predict what's going to happen before they turn on the fan. Yeah, lots of good
Absolutely.
stuff.
That's great. Brylan also says thinking outside the box would be really good for this activity. Great. Okay. Well, thank you guys so much for doing all the activities together. I hope that you guys really can see the activities that you probably do in your library already could also fill in a grid like this, and hopefully it can just help you be a little bit more mindful about, the kinds of activities that you're doing and how you're already doing some things that would fit into this reimagining school readiness. So Beth, I think we're at a break, right?
Yes, indeed. It is 2:27. I think if we all come back at 2:35, that should be sufficient. Give people more than 5 minutes to get to the restroom and back, get your beverage refilled, whatever you need to do, stretch your legs. So we'll come back and we will get started again right at 2:35. And stay logged in. If you want to, you can turn off your camera and your mic, but don't leave. And yeah, we'll do our
See ya.
second round. Bye. All right, everybody. Hopefully folks are back.
It is time. It is
It is
2:35.
It is that time. Well, I was going to do something else, but never mind.
Were you gonna sing? Because
Yeah, and then
I'm ready for that.
I shouldn't. I was going
Why we're children's librarians.
All right, let's see. I guess we are still recording.
You can edit out the break later.
Stop, but yeah, we'll edit it out later.
Oh, right. What am I doing?
And I need to share. No, I am still screen sharing. All right, we are ready to go. Okay, so welcome back. We are going to now start talking a little bit more about integrating all of this into your existing programming. We kind of got a taste of it with those, not experiments, but those activities that we just did. So we're going to start by watching a couple of videos, and then going to ask you to, again, identify where you see some of the key findings and what the people in the videos are doing. So keep those key findings near you again. And then after those 3 videos, we will talk a little bit more about it. And then at the end, we're going to move into showing you where you can find some of the resources. So, all right, let's watch some videos. This first video is from the Erickson Early Math Collaborative. And this one is an adult interacting in a play situation with toddlers.
Are you gonna put in the 2? It rolled all the way down. And it came out the other end. What about you, Cody? You gonna drop one of your balls in the 2? Look. Look. Uh-oh. It won't go in it. Look. It won't go in. Let's see what'll happen if we try to put it in that one over there. Go try to put it in that one. Let's see if it'll fit in that one. Nope. It doesn't go in that one either. What about if we choose this one? This bigger one. It's wider. Does it go in? Yep. It went in. Yeah, it went all the way through and it rolled all the way over there.
All right. So what did you notice there? What were some of the things that stood out to you? Any volunteers?
You can also type in the chat.
Yeah, for sure.
There was good communication between the adult and the kids, and then like teaching them about the different sizes of things and like that experimentation, and also the motor skills of having the child like try to put it in each tube.
Yeah. Samantha kind of takes that another step further. They're using a lot of spatial vocabulary, right? Allison says problem solving, Freeland says spatial awareness of the size of the ball in the tube. Yeah, so lots of math skills happening here. Also, she was participating. That was a good example of guided play, right? So she had set up those balls in those different size tubes, and she was actually down there doing reciprocal play with them, playing with them, and working through asking them questions about what they might want to try. Anything else?
I think it's also an example of parallel play because the toddler was a little bit more independent and could do it like kind of on her own, but they were all I think it's a gray area.
That's true.
But definitely there was a lot of good quality play happening, I would say, for sure.
Because there's only one adult for two kids. So
And really, like, they were using their whole bodies to play this, right? Like the mom was sitting, I'm assuming she's the mom, was sitting there on the floor with them. They were walking all around. There was a lot of movement happening with their whole bodies.
yeah. All right. Well, let's go on to the next video. This next video is also from the Erickson Early Math Collaborative. And she's going to be talking about using the book Mouse Count by Stoll, right? Is the author's last name. Yeah.
Using the mouse count book is just really, really fun. You are going to be mice, and what am I gonna be?
The snake.
I'm gonna be the... It's just such a wonderful, inspiring way for the kids to talk about the idea of more and less and joining and separating.
They were very careful to watch out for snakes, except when they got sleepy, right? When they got sleepy, they forgot all about snakes and they took a nap. So here comes the snake. He's very, very hungry because he had no breakfast and no lunch.
This idea of more and less is really valuable to children, and they need to understand it through storytelling.
Is 2 mice enough for me? No, I am
I separated an area of space with a circle of tape on the rug to indicate the jar in the story.
Here are 3 mice, little, warm, and tasty. I will put them into my jar.
I made it not a very big space. I made it pretty small space for the children because I wanted them to be able to physically feel what it means when you're adding more to something. That when there are more people in the jar, there's less space for me. I don't have as much room. For their bodies to be able to physically feel that adding of children, it helps them to understand the idea of more.
Okay, what happened to my jar now?
Full.
It's getting more full. Are there more mice in the jar now?
Yes.
Yes, there are more mice.
When the children are going into the jar and when they're coming out, I'm talking a lot about joining and separating because I want the children to understand the idea of operations.
Rock the jar a little more, right? Rock, rock, rock. One more mice escapes from the jar. What happened to my jar? Are there less mice now?
Yeah.
There are fewer mice now. Okay, rock, rock, rock.
When you add more to a set of objects, you have a larger quantity, you have more. And when you take students away or you take objects away from the jar, that's losing objects from the set. And through that, they can understand the idea of more and less.
What happened as the snake put more mice in the jar? What happened to the jar? It got full, right? And what happened when the mice were escaping?
They walked.
I know. And what happened to the jar?
It was empty. It was zero.
There were 0 mice.
Working with preschoolers, doing this storytelling, changing, adding, and subtracting is their first experience with these higher order mathematical concepts, you know, of addition and subtraction and operation.
Okay, so thinking back to your key findings, what did you notice about this one? What stood out about what she was doing with those kids?
Doing math through play.
Yeah. She was definitely working with a lot of math concepts and vocabulary. Spatial, we have in the chat, spatial awareness, body and brain, mathematics skills. Yeah.
And all that movement is going to help them remember what she was trying to teach them. I mean, they should be able to remember the idea that there were fewer and then more and all of that.
Right.
And even that just physical feeling of when it was more, then you're
Yes.
closer together. And when it was less, you got to be more spread out in the jar. Samantha says the same thing, physically feeling more and less. So tying that math concept to your actual body.
Yeah.
We didn't talk about that a ton yesterday. I can't remember if we talked about counting on your fingers in this group, how beneficial that is. And this is really similar to that idea. It's the idea of connecting that mind concept to your own body.
I wanted to point out Kara's comment also. She said storytelling was an added element going through the parts of the story. And in Every Child Ready to Read, we talk about how telling and then having the kids help you retell a story is a great way to encourage narrative skills or knowing how stories in books work, which is an early literacy skill. So she's really combining all kinds of wonderful techniques in this example.
And, you know, we talked about, well, I'm going to be quiet for a minute. I think there's more we can get here. Folks, is there more? What else? Think about the skills.
I thought that tying it in with dramatic play probably increased the quality of like the interactions and the conversations that she had with them, just because they had more feelings about it. So they had more to say.
Yeah, and they were doing it together, right? I think that's a really good point, Chloe, because it really is that, is it reciprocal play? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes, that's what it is, you know, because they're all doing it together and you get that sense of community and it does increase the quality of those interactions.
Another
Kara?
great, yeah.
Yep, I love it. Self-control, self-regulation. The kids had to follow the direction. They had to go in and out of the circle one at a time. They had to wait their turn. Samantha says almost the exact same thing. That's great.
You needed to follow directions. Yep.
I'd also add subitization a little bit. She didn't really talk about how many kids were in the jar at any given time, but you could certainly add that, you know, like put a few kids in the jar and be like, how many are there now? And not count, you know, for smaller numbers that would work.
All right, let's watch the last video.
Thanks for all your observations.
Yes, thank you. These are excellent. So this one is from a project that the Bay Area Discovery Museum did with Teach for America students. And in this video, they're working on an engineering project. They're building instruments for a parade that their parents are going to be attending later. So same question, make some observations about what the teacher is doing here. And you might need to turn your volume up on this one. It's a little soft for me and I have it up as loud as I can get it. So hopefully you'll be able to hear it fine, but just a forewarning. All right, here we go.
So how do you think we can use these containers to make an instrument? Like for the mariachi band or like maybe for a shaker? What do you think we could do with that to make it into an instrument? You think maybe we need to put something inside like these shakers? Yeah. Well, what do you think we could put inside? That's so good. You think you want to try the fish pebbles? No. Ah. It looks different. No. Oh, that tape did work better, Frida. Look, none of the sand is falling out anymore. It is, yeah. Can you tell Jennifer your idea? Yeah? You gonna try it too? You want to try this tape some more? Maybe you want to come sit next to Jimena so you can reach the tape. Is this the one you want to use on Wednesday? Okay, so this one we'll put back. And this one you like. Is it finished or do you need to change something? Well, what I try to focus on the most is critical thinking skills. The idea that they have to think, that we're not going to give them an answer to a thing, and the idea that even once they think up what they think might be an answer, that there might be multiple answers that could all be equally valid. And sometimes your idea might not work the way you thought it would, and so you have to rethink it. And in addition to that is the collaboration. So whenever possible, to try to get children to talk to each other, or just to notice each other and to try to build on each other's ideas. So. You like Michelle's idea to use the tubes, the paper tubes? And the rubber bands, you're going to tie them around there? Are you trying to find two shapes that are the same? Two sizes, the same length? Oh man, you're having a hard time finding one that's the same as that. You found 3 buttons that are the same. So how do you think we can use these?
Okay, we'll stop it there. That one's a little bit longer than the others. So yeah, so what observations can you make about the instructors and interactions, as well as the interactions between the kids and what was happening there?
I like how he drew the kids together, allowing them to discuss it amongst themselves as well as with him. A lot of critical thinking going on. You know, I noticed the boy was even going to try to extend the length of his shorter toilet paper roll to match the longer one. So yeah. And
Yes.
even sensory, the girl was smelling things, noticing that they had a smell. Yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you, Barbara. We've got critical thinking, planning, collaboration with one another. We've got letting the children think it out on their own, kind of what Barbara was saying too. He asked them how they are going to make the instruments. He's basically asking them, you know, what's their plan? Even if it's not written down, they can still have a mental plan using that that short-term, that memory that we talked about, one of their executive function skills. Anything else?
I really like the way he spoke out loud so everyone could hear the things that the other kids were learning. Like when he was talking to the one girl about how the one kind of tape worked better than the other kind of tape. I just thought he did a great job of the way he was phrasing that. Like he was verbalizing her observation for the whole group.
Oh yeah, yeah. That's a great one. And she says, building on each other's ideas. Yeah. Lots of encouragement of collaboration and talking to the other kids.
Lots of question asking. I bet if we went through and watched it again, not that we are going to, and listened for all of his sentences, most of them are questions. I think that's a really good model for, you know, if we have crafts that we're doing in our library, instead of, you know, like, I don't know, don't put that there, put it over here. You know, clearly we want to let the kids try all the things that they would want to try for their crafts, but also trying to ask questions about like, ooh, do you think that's going to work? Great, let's try it. That kind of stuff.
Yeah, questions and encouragement.
And I think independence. Whenever I watch this, I'm always struck by the girl that's really going to town on that tape. She just keeps going and she's doing it herself. And I know at some point I would be like, ooh, let me have a turn. But you know, she's
that's a lot of tape.
Exactly. Barbara?
I noticed that she was actually pulling off almost the correct length each time, or it seemed to be. So she had already kind of measured that in her mind and was able to adjust.
Yeah, and that's spatial thinking too. Really good point.
That's so funny. I noticed that too. I thought she's doing a pretty good job taping that for a kid her age. Good for her. That's awesome.
So she clearly has had a lot of practice with fine motor skills. Samantha says, I love that his setup is just the materials and the mariachi band. They can act independently with that inspiration. He doesn't judge their choices. Really great. And this is another example of guided sort of play. You know, he's giving them the idea and then they're going with it. They're running with it.
Giving them the materials and the idea. And yeah, so I would just say this is one example of a pretty darn easy program, potentially, where you just take maybe some materials out of your craft closet and you say, today we're going to create XYZ. Lego programs are another great example of a similar concept where you have the Legos out, you say, here's the inspiration for today. You all come up with what you want to come up with.
Mm-hmm.
All right, shall we move on?
Sure.
Suzanne? Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay, so I'm gonna just go through a couple slides here and talk a little bit more about practical applications for your library. For story times, I'm sure a lot of you are probably already doing them. Hands up if you do story times at your library, if you're involved in them at all. Yep. So for this, I really feel like you don't have to take all this information that Beth and I are giving you and totally remake your story times. I think if you want to use like a sheet like this or a model like this and really just kind of map out where in your story times these things naturally occur, I think that's a really effective sort of thought process to go through, thought experiment to go through, and also maybe trying to identify those areas where maybe you should beef it up a little bit. Maybe you don't really do a ton of counting or didn't realize the benefits of doing that. And so maybe you want to go ahead and do more of those. Maybe when you do a craft in your library, instead of having it be very linear, you'll be a little bit more open to it being more open. Maybe you'll be more excited to do something messy because we realize that that's about experimenting and thinking with scientific brains and things like that versus having a real easy time of it. So there's that. I think I talked about this morning. I don't think I've talked about it with you guys yet. Sometimes I try to limit drama in my story times by like making sure all my scissors are the same color. So the kids aren't like, I want that pair of scissors. After taking this training, I almost feel like that's not the best thing to do because it doesn't encourage them to have that growth mindset. It doesn't encourage them to be like, oh, I got the wrong color. What am I going to do now? Well, guess what? You're going to live with it. Like you're going to normalize that failure and like move on with life. It's learning. It's like a social emotional skill to learn how to deal with what life has given you. So I might try to be a little less careful about that and allow my story times to be a little messier just all across the board, because that's where learning happens. That's where that science piece happens. So that's one way to think about story time. Also, you can obviously incorporate some of the books that we talked about yesterday too about growth mindset. You can go to the next one. So another thing is that you saw from the activities that we did today, the 4 activities, that Bay Area Discovery Museum is really into hands-on activities and really having the kids be really active. On the left, there's a mystery box, which is supposed to build on children's natural curiosity. So they can put their hand in and feel, it's funny, and see what's in there and maybe guess. And then on the right, this was a program for the book, Not a Box. And they just had the materials out and children could come and make whatever they want. So that's kind of great. So outside of story times, again, with programs, don't be afraid of doing a mess, of making messes. Don't be afraid of, you definitely want to keep things open-ended. And something else that they say, I forgot to say this morning, the Bay Area Discovery Museum is really into not providing a model for any crafts. So, Beth and I talk a lot about crafts and how beneficial they are and how you get so many different things from doing different kinds of crafts. And it really depends on what you want to do, what you want to accomplish. Because if you're doing a snowman craft and you go ahead and you show them the model and you want them to do the big ball on the bottom and the medium ball in the middle and the little ball on the top, you are learning something. You're learning rudimentary coding with children. They're learning linear thinking. They're learning how to follow directions. There's a benefit to doing that. Bottom also says there's a benefit to not providing a model, to having the kids try different things to see how it looks and see how they like it. So I think crafts, I could talk about crafts till the cows come home, because it's the whole idea of the process that they're going on versus the end product that they get. Is it a process craft where the process is really what you're working for, or is it a product craft where you want them all to look the same? Beth?
Yeah, I was just gonna chime in and say, there's also that other little piece where, you've got neurodivergent children who might be in your program also, who really need and crave that model. in order to feel comfortable. And so I don't think there's anything wrong with providing a model. I think the important part here is encouraging parents not to take over the craft and insisting that the craft end up looking exactly like the model. You know, if the kid wants to do something else, that's fine. Like, so that, I think keeping that door open, especially if you're a person who prefers having examples, I think it's okay.
That's true. Absolutely. Because I could totally see, you know, anxiety coming from a kid who's like, but I want it to look perfect, you know? And so there's benefits to kind of working through that. And then there's benefits to also being like, let me give you the comfort that you're looking for right now. And then, oh, I was going to say something else about crafts and it's gone. Anyway, yeah. So again, with doing hands-on activities, you're oftentimes giving other opportunities for that rich discussion. You can ask open-ended questions. You can have kids work on things together, which gives you that reciprocal play kind of thing. Trying different things is all the science. And depending on what you do, a lot of times spatial things are very oftentimes involved in crafts. And then of course, with body and mind, making a plan. Very oftentimes before you do a craft, you make a plan. You're going to figure out, how am I going to make my snowman? How am I going to do this? So yeah, so I think with outside of story time, anytime you do a hands-on activity would apply. And again, just being mindful about what you're doing. The last thing that I'm going to mention is the fact that you can share all of this information that we talked about in lots of ways with your community. One way that you can share is through social media, and Beth is going to share later a tool that the Bay Area Discovery Museum has put together for anybody who wants to use it in order to share just little bits of information about the 6 findings and about really what you're doing at your library to support parents and support kiddos. So that's all I wanted to mention. I will give you just a little heads up at the end today. We're going to have enough time to have kind of what we hope is going to be a little bit of a robust wrap-up discussion. So be reflecting on the kinds of things that you might want to share at the end, thinking about everything you learned yesterday and what you learned today.
Okay, so this is kind of the last section. You've made it almost. We're almost there. So we're going to talk now about resources that Bay Area Discovery Museum has made available to libraries to use. They call it their toolkit. And I'm going to first highlight several of the things that are available on the website, and then I'm actually going to go to the website and I'll show you where on the website you can find all these things. But I just want to introduce them really quickly here. And first of all, of course, we have our position paper and the Promising Practices Guide. So the position paper is where you will find a lot of the research. It's the full paper. So if you want to learn more, if this is a topic that really intrigues you or you want to understand it even more fully, we encourage you to read through that position paper. It's available online. We didn't print it for you. It's on the longer side, but it is available online for you to read if you're interested. On the right-hand side is the Promising Practices Guide. It's a guide specifically for library staff. So if you maybe don't want to dig all the way into the position paper, then we encourage you to definitely take a look at the Promising Practices Guide, because they've designed it to be more directly applicable to the work that we do in libraries. So that one we did print and sent to you. So hopefully you all received it, but it is available on the website also, you know, if you didn't get it or if you need more copies. The next thing is there are 4 different case studies on the website that you can read through if you're interested, of 4 different types of libraries. The first one is the Fowler Branch. They're a small library branch. They had no programs for young children at all at their library. And this whole program helped them develop some story time programs. So you can read about that there. Ovid is a larger branch with tons of resources. And so they tweaked some of their existing programs based on toolkit recommendations. So you got either end of the spectrum there. And then the other 2 case studies also incorporate some learnings from early in the pandemic. So when libraries were going more virtual with their programming, those two studies kind of cover that. There are several different posters that you can print if you're interested, and they come in different sizes. You can see them here, including one that is 8.5 by 11. So if you are at a small library that doesn't have printing facilities that let you print like big poster size things, you can at the very least print these 8.5 by 11 regular sized sheets. And then, like I said, there's a few different versions of these. So those are available on the website to print. These little cards on the left are time to try math activities. So each card has an idea for a math related activity that adults could do with children, whether you're doing that in the library and just using these for your programs, or whether you want to make them available for parents to take home. There's lots of different ways you could do it. They also have signs. These are available in like a sign size. So if you wanted to put them on tables or something, you could do that. Just a side note also with the cards, they hole punched the corners and then they used those circle, those ring binder clip things to keep them all together in one bunch. So they could just flip through them. We have bookmarks and flyers that you can print that give school readiness tips. And then this is the social media information that Suzanne was referring to. So there is a link to this Excel sheet, and the first tab is instructions and FAQ. So if you aren't sure how this is supposed to be used, you can refer to that. The next tab is posts that are designed to be posted on Facebook. So they'll probably be a little longer. And then they also have Twitter posts because of course, tweets have to be shorter than a Facebook post would have to be. And then you can also probably tell that there are several different languages that these are available in. So if your library community serves folks whose first language is not English and you want to make them available in those languages, they're available in this spreadsheet. There is a talking points for library staff document. This is probably kind of a good starting point. It's facilitating communication between libraries and school districts. So if you have an audience that you just want to be able to hit the high points, this could be a good document to get you started with that. On the right-hand side, it's not really related. They just put them on the same slide. But there is a program survey also available. So if you're a library that would like to start, if you don't already, do some sort of post-program surveying to see what the satisfaction is with your participants, they offer this survey for you to help you out, give you a starting place. And then finally, they're calling it an activity database. It's actually currently a list of activities, and I'm going to take you to the website and show you here in just a moment. I think they have a goal of making it more of like a searchable database at some point, but right now it's just a list.
Because Beth, it doesn't look like that on the slide, right?
No,
yeah,
it doesn't. Here, I'm going to
we'll
go ahead.
we'll show you what it looks like.
Yeah, I'm going to stop sharing.
And I'll just say that I do think the activity database, for lack of a better word, is a really cool resource. Really, all of these resources are really nice and they're sort of packaged and ready to go and free. You don't have to even have an account or anything to sign in. They're all there.
Yeah. Did you, and you already popped the link into the website?
I sure did. Yep.
So the link is there. We will also send it out via email. I'm going to send some follow-up resources to everyone who registered here in the next day or two. And so it takes you to this website. Up at the top, it says watch webinars. This is a group of webinars that were produced by the Bay Area Discovery Museum. I think some of them were done in conjunction with the California State Library when they were first starting this program. So they are not exactly what Suzanne and I just did. They're very similar though. So do I think you all need to rewatch them? No, probably not. But you're welcome to, or if you want to share them with someone else, you can. We will be sending out the recordings to these trainings also though. So just another option if you're interested. Then you scroll down, and at the top of the page is the position paper, the Promising Practices Guide. I wanted to also point out this research overview. So if you're someone who is super into the research, you really want to know more about all the studies that they pulled from when they were coming up with this, check out that overview. Here's the case studies that I mentioned of the 4 different libraries. There's the bookmarks, the math activities, the flyers, the posters, and then you can get to the social media information through here, the program survey and the talking points. And then we get to the activity, quote unquote, database at the bottom. I'm going to click on browse activities, and you'll see it is just right now a list of the activities, but there is a lot more than what we did today.
And I think this list has pros and cons. The cons are that you don't really know what age range any things are for. You don't really know what it is until you drill into it. But like you could find Nature Mashup is there.
Yeah, there it is.
Yeah.
There you go.
So you can open it up and you get a little bit, and then you have to click on learn more. And also, I pointed this out to the last group, today in the training, they say that Nature Mashup is really for babies, but on the website, they have it ages 2 to 5.
5, yeah. I thought that was
which I think is a little bit more appropriate personally. So yeah, but you can see they have I'm sorry, Beth, I'm talking.
You're fine. So yeah,
see,
there's materials that you need, and the instructions and the additional tips and things are all here, as well as the links to the key findings, which they're calling creativity skills. You can see a shorthand of them over here, and then a shorthand of the scope of the activity here too, like how long it will take you, the age range, the topics, things like that.
And I really like these because it gives you a lot of it's almost like educational standards. It's almost like, oh, I'm doing this for these reasons, and it sort of helps explain things.
Sure. I was just also going to point out that they do have all of these hyperlinked, so it'll take you to other similar activities. And then I did also want to point out, these were not on slides, but I think that these could potentially be useful. So I want to make sure you see them, and I will also link to them when I send out the resource sheet. So it'll all be in one place for you there as well. But there's this Creative Summer Learning Experiences, a practical guide for libraries. So as you're looking towards next summer, if you want to see some ideas for how you might want to incorporate some of this into your summer programming, definitely check this out. There's some great information. It kind of, again, pulls it all together into one place for you. The other one is the resources for promoting childhood creativity through libraries. It's another resource packet. It's for promoting creativity in children. And so this is actually a lot more activity ideas. You can see in the table of contents that it lists quite a few of them, and they are different ones than are in the quote unquote database, I believe. So those are 2 more things that are available. Anything else about the website you wanted me to point out, Suzanne, that I forgot?
No, I just think that the activity database is really worth an exploration. You will have to explore it a little bit to kind of see what's there, but I think it's totally worth it. Even if you've got you need to plan some programs and you're like, I don't know what to do. Just start there, peck around and see what you find.
Yeah. I'm going to pull up the discussion questions here now.
Yay. So when Beth puts these on the screen, just be thinking about your answers based on the whole training, and really just know that Beth and I are totally willing to go anywhere you want with this final discussion. This is the last time that we're going to be talking about this training with you guys, and we're really open to hearing all of your feedback and also, what you learned. So let's start with this first question, which is really just to kind of get us going. What's one thing that you guys already do to prepare children for success in school and life? And you can use the chat box. We really would encourage you guys to unmute though at this time.
And also, we're not looking for super high level answers here. I think you all do things already to prepare children for success in school and life through your jobs. just by being a children's librarian, you're doing stuff. So
Yeah, so just throw some things out.
Story times.
Yep.
yes, absolutely.
We also have a weekly playtime where families can come in and have some one-on-one time for play and like play with other kids and learn sharing and stuff like that.
That's fantastic. We've got story times and play area.
As part of our story time, I do extension activities. So there's a lot of reciprocal play provided for parents and guided play to do for the different areas. We do a lot of fine motor skill activities that are set up so families can play together and develop those.
Thank you.
Sarah, I think you were unmuted. Did you want to talk?
I was just going to say opportunities for guided play in the library. I think it's when we do those things, it's really good examples for our families who maybe don't do those kinds of things at home. When they come to the library and see it, it helps give them ideas for things to do outside the library.
Great. Thank you.
And I'm going to read off some of the chat for the benefit of the recording.
Mhm.
We had a toddler sensory program called Messy Munchkins with several sensory messy playstations. That sounds really funny, or fun, not funny. It sounds fun. Oh my gosh.
It can be funny too.
It could be funny. Station-based activities for creative exploration. Those are always great. And I create preschool, early elementary science videos with my kiddos for our social media. Ooh, that's nice.
Hopefully this will give you a lot of ideas for that. That's great.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun, and I really let them try to do most of it in the videos so I can have parents realize that their kids can do these things. I have a 3-year-old and a 5-year-old, and we get really good engagement with
So
them.
you use your own kids
I
in the
do
videos.
use my own kids.
I think that's amazing. That's fantastic. That's really unique, actually. I don't know that I've seen very many done like that. That's great.
They're like little library employees, honorary employees.
Aw.
See, that's fantastic. I love it. Okay, so for the next question, you can answer it one of two ways. On the screen, it says, one thing I'm going to try that is outside my comfort zone is, or you guys could just tell us, what did you learn from this training, and what are your takeaways? What are you
Yeah.
going to do differently? We'd love to hear those.
So I work at a branch that has, not a branch, I work in a system that has 10 branches. And I'm sort of like in charge of training the everybody in story time. So I think I really want to get everyone thinking about growth mindset and how to apply that in story time as well.
I love that, Kara. We talked about that in the previous group. One of the things that someone mentioned was maybe doing a book club of that mindset book. You wouldn't even have to read the whole book. You could just read some chapters. That might be a way to springboard that.
We are also, our library is partnered with, what is that called? Self-healing communities. I don't know if that's something people are familiar with, but we have staff members throughout our system who have to attend these trainings on like, I think growth mindset was part of it, as well as they learn about the brain and stuff like that. So it's
And,
something that
resiliency and stuff.
Yeah. So I think that's something that some people are already familiar with, but I'd like to see more connections.
That's great. And it's so cool when you can have like different priorities that start rising to the surface and that they're the same. Like that's amazing.
Yeah.
That's great.
And encouraging that your library is already working on that stuff. That's great. Yeah. Anybody else?
Just
Anything useful
what
for
other
them?
takeaways do you
Yeah.
have from this? What are some things that you learned? And a couple things from the chat. Brylan says getting multiple skill sets into one or two activities. I'd say it's pretty rare if you do an activity and you're not working on more than one thing. So that's really great. Anita says we're going to try to get the Hex Bug Mazes started. That's great.
Cool.
Shanley says I hope to do more to encourage growth mindset with my families. Any other takeaways? What about math and counting and things like that?
Anyone already incorporating that or planning to start incorporating it?
One of the things that I have suggested for all of our storytime librarians is that to make sure that you use some kind of finger counting rhyme or felt in storytime.
Yeah, I mean, I think children's librarians knew that was fun and we knew it was a good way to get at early literacy skills, but knowing that you really get a double whammy with the math skills in the body and brain make it that more valuable. So I think that's great.
Allison says expanding upon what our staff already know from Every Child Ready to Read to include more math and science.
Yeah.
Perfect.
In the past, I've used that bedtime math website for lots of activities with kids, and
Yeah.
it's very helpful.
That's a great one.
I'm gonna
Maybe I
get the
should
link.
include a link to that in the follow-up email to remind people that it exists.
If you haven't heard of bedtime math, that's a wonderful resource.